Hey guys, the book that I'm reading is The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise by Dan Gemmenhart. I want to let you know one of my students emailed Dan Gemmenhart, who is the author, and he emailed her back right away. So if you have a question when you're reading a book or just curious about how the author came up with the idea, send them an email. You never know, they might respond. How cool to get to email back and forth with a famous author. I'm going to read you chapter 1. Love this book. It's very exciting. About a very alternative lifestyle this family is leading, and I really think you'll enjoy it. There were big days and there were small days, and there were bad days and there were good days, and I suppose I could pick any one of them for my once upon a time. But if I'm going to be truthful, and truthful is something I always aim to be, then there really is only one best place to start this story. It all started with Ivan. Once upon a time, it was hot and I was sweaty. It was about 5 months before my 13th birthday, give or take. We were somewhere in Oregon. Honestly, I don't even remember the name of the town, but I know it was on the dry, hot side of the state, away from the ocean. The whole world was so yellow and shining from the beating down sun that you had to squint no matter where you looked. The black top of the gas station parking lot radiated the heat right back up at you, so it felt like you were getting cooked from both sides. I suppose most barefoot people would have been hooting and hopping with that sizzling asphalt burning the bottoms of their feet. But my soles were used to it, and I walked along easy as you please. My t-shirt was stuck with sweat to my back. The braid that hung down nearly to my blue jean belts slapped wetly against it as I walked. Ew. The man behind the counter looked at my bare feet and started to say something. "Miss, you can't..." But I knew where he was going with that before it started that tyrannical, "No shoes, no shirt, no service." It's pretty darn universal in America's gas station convenience stores. I just waved at him and cut it off. I know, I said, and kept walking. I'll only be a minute. I'd never been in that particular gas station before, but it was exactly the same as every other one. So really, I'd been in it a million times. Rows of plastic-wrapped junk food, walls lined with glass-doored coolers full of pop and beer and flavored iced teas. I walked past the metal racks of beef jerky and candy bars to the pot of gold at the end of my rainbow, the slushy machine. There it was, humming in the corner next to the coffee dispenser and soda fountain. My mouth started watering as soon as I saw the neon-colored sugar slush swirling around the big plastic dome. There was a kid standing in front of it, looking up at the churning slurry with desire written plain and clear across his face. He was 7 or 8 and staring up at the left flavor, which was an unlikely pinkish color labeled wild watermelon. "Big mistake," I said. I said, walking up next to him and grabbing a cup from the pull-down dispenser. He jerked his head to look at me. "What is?" I nodded with my chin at the slushy he was coveting. "Watermelon, that's a no-go. Never waste your time with anything that claims to be watermelon or banana flavored. It's a scam every time." He squinted at me, clearly unconvinced. "Doesn't matter anyway," he said. "My mom said no." He threw his head back dramatically. "But I'm so hot." I yanked down another cup and held it out to him. "Here," I said, "my treat." The kid's face lit up. "For reals?" he asked. "Yep." But then his face dropped again, just as quick. "But Mom said no. I'll probably get in trouble." I shrugged. You're probably going to get in trouble at some point today anyway. You may as well get a slushie out of it." He thought about that for a real short second and then snatched the cup from my hand. "But I really would think twice about getting watermelon," I added. My advice fell on deaf ears, and in a flash he was pulling down the knob and squirting glistening pink slush into his cup. I filled mine with the other flavor, funky fruit punch, which was the superior choice in every aspect. The kid looked at me up and down as we walked toward the cashier. "You're wearing weird clothes." I looked down at my raggedy blue jeans and grease-stained white t-shirt. "I'm basically wearing the same thing you're wearing," I pointed out. "Exactly," he said, "and I'm a boy." So boys and girls shouldn't wear the same thing." "Well, then you better change, 'cause I ain't." He had nothing to say to that, which was probably the right move on his part since I hadn't paid for his slushie yet. I ignored the hostile, good riddance look on the cashier's face when I paid. Like hot asphalt on bare feet, it was something I was used to. Me and the kid walked through the jangling door and back out into the heat. The highway hummed not too far off in the distance. The kid took a big slurping suck on his slushy straw. He swallowed and smacked his lips and nodded. "Well," I asked, "how's the wild watermelon?" He ran his tongue over his lips, considering. "Sweet," he said. "Weird. Not really like watermelon at all." I nodded and took a suck of my delicious, flavor as advertised funky fruit punch. "Lesson learned, kid. Now you know." He looked glumly at the phosphorescent pinkness in his cup. I sighed. It's tough, seeing a kid get a bad break. I held mine out to him. "Here," he said. I said, "Trade." His eyebrows shot high. "For reals?" "Sure, I don't mind it all that much," I lied. "And you're the one who's getting in trouble. Better make it worth it." We swapped slushies, and I took a sip of wild watermelon. He watched for my reaction. "I think," I said, "that the flavor designer at the slushie company needs to spend a little more time eating watermelon." The kid nodded. I tapped my slushie up against his. "Cheers, kid. Enjoy." He said thanks, and I said you're welcome. And then he said, "You want a kitten?" And I swallowed a mouthful of syrupy slush and licked my lips and wiped a bit of juice off my chin with my arm and said, "What?" "You want a kitten?" he repeated. He pointed to where an older boy sat on the curb next to a big cardboard box. "We're giving them away. Want one?" I looked out at the big, beat-up yellow school bus parked next to one of the gas pumps. There was no way I'd be allowed to get a cat. It was a no-go for sure, I sighed. "Well," I said, "let's go take a look at least." There were 5 kittens in the cardboard box, and when I leaned over to look in, they all looked up at me with big round eyes and triangle ears, and I'll tell you, I was smitten. "Who are you?" the older kid asked. And the younger one said, "She bought me a slushie." And the older kid held out his hand, and the younger one handed it over. The older kid took a slurp and smacked his lips and nodded and handed it back. "You want a kitten?" he asked. They were brothers as brothers can be, those two. I eyed the bus again and cocked an eyebrow. He was nowhere to be seen. "Well, I guess I don't know yet. It's complicated." Both boys nodded. They had parents, and they knew how it was. "Go ahead, pick one up," the older boy said. "Take it for a spin." I pursed my lips. They were awfully cute, those tiny things with their wispy tails and whiskers. I thought about how I would get away with it. The kitten mewed up at me, squealing in scratchy little squeaks that could be a problem. "Which one's the quietest one?" Without a moment's pause, both kids pointed out the smallest one. A gray and white striped puff of fur off by itself a little ways in a corner of the box. "Something's wrong with that one," the younger kid said. "The other ones never shut up, but that one hasn't made a peep since it was born." "Really?" I said, and narrowed my eyes in approval. "She sounds just about right, then." "It's a boy." "It is?" "Check for yourself." No thanks. I'll take your word for it." I crouched there looking at the little, silent white and gray furball. He looked back at me. He had a very serious look about him, solemn even. Like maybe he had it backward, and what he thought was happening was him deciding whether or not to pick me. He was not a kitten to be trifled with. I set my slushie on the curb and reached in and cradled that little thing in my hand as gentle as I could. A hush flew over my whole self when I felt that trembling soul in my big, clumsy hand. He was all fragile feeling, bones and feathery fur and racing, frantic heartbeats. I held him right up to my face. He looked back at me, his eyes huge and ears forward, but he didn't make a sound. He didn't meow, didn't growl, didn't squeak, didn't wiggle. We looked deep into each other's eyes, me and that kitten. My heart got a little bigger with each beat. I tell you, something changed when that kitten and I looked at each other, something big. Either something in the universe that had been sitting still for too long started moving again, or something that was moving finally fell still. Either way, it was something. You see, I'd walked into that gas station alone, and I'd walked out of it alone. Just like I'd walked into and out of gas stations almost every day for like years. And maybe right then and there, holding that kitten, is when I just had enough of all that aloneness. It was a quiet moment, and maybe one that anyone watching from outside my heart wouldn't have even noticed. But I tell you, it was something big all the same. The kitten yawned, a jaw-gaping yawn that showed off his sharp needle teeth and scaly gray tongue and a decent percentage of his throat. Yeah, I whispered, you're the one, aren't you? So, you want him? Yeah, I whispered through a little smile that was just growing on my face. Yeah, I want him. It was about the truest thing I'd ever said. Now, I knew I'd never get permission to keep the warm little ball of perfection I was holding in my hands. It was a no without a doubt, and I knew it. I knew he wouldn't be happy when he found out, but I also knew that the thing he was always saying was, whenever your heart wants to go there and don't look back. And where my heart wanted to go was definitely looking back at me with eyes that were bluer than a blue raspberry slush. Who's that weirdo? The younger kid asked his brother. And even though I was stuck in love at first sight yawn lock with the kitten, I didn't have to look to know they were talking about. I glanced over my shoulder anyway, because I had to know how to conceal a contraband kitten. There he was, in all his glory. Brown jeans with more holes than jeans. No shirt, no shoes. There isn't doubt he would get no service. Skinny, with bony shoulders and ribs poking out all over the place. Long, shaggy hair pulled back with a bandana. A big, bushy beard that hung down almost to his collarbones. He was scraping all the bug corpses off the bus's windshield with the little squeegee on a stick that gas stations keep by the pumps. And he was half dancing and whistling while he did it. He looked totally funky fruit punch, which he was, so, again, flavor as advertised. That, I answered, lowering the kitten to my belly to keep him out of sight, is Rodeo. Both kids squinted up at me. He's my dad, I added. That dude's your dad? Yep. I lowered my face and my voice and whispered, but don't tell him that, okay? Both boys nodded with their serious, syrup-stained faces. They were the kind you could trust, those brothers. I looked back at the bus, the kitten pressed up against my t-shirt. Rodeo was doing his cleaning shuffle all around the front of the bus. If I was going to make this kitten in my hand a kitten in my bus, I was going to need help. I looked at the little kid who was sucking hard at his slushie and still eyeballing Rodeo. Could you do me a solid, kid? He scrunched up his eyebrows. A favor, I explained, and he nodded. You see that back window on the bus with the curtains that got him stars on them? Yeah, that's my room. I need you to... That's your room? Like, your room? Sure. You live on that bus? Yeah, so? I never knew one who lived on a school bus. Well, you can't say that anymore, can you? I handed the kitten over to him, gentle as could be. Here's the deal. Ain't no way Rodeo's going to say yes to this kitten. Yet anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and get on and go to my room. Meet me with the kitten at the window at the other side in like a minute, okay? The kid looked at his brother. His brother shrugged and nodded. The kid looked back at me. So me and you both are going to get into trouble today, huh? I grinned at him. Guess so. But heck, if kittens and slushies aren't worth getting in trouble for, what in the world is? I grabbed my sunglasses from where they were hanging off my t-shirt collar. They were big, huge, round brown things with thick plastic frames. $1 at a New Mexico flea market and worth every penny. I slid them on, turning the lights down on the world. You ready? Sure. I sauntered up to the bus, sipping at my watermelon slushie like I didn't have a care in the world. Rodeo looked over at me when I swung open the accordion door. He was scraping at a grasshopper leg with his thumbnail, his tongue out in concentration. No bananas, he asked. No, sir, I said with a little salute. though to be truthful, I hadn't remembered to look. Well, shoot, Rodeo said, and then flashed me that toothy smile that I could never help but smile back at. On the next stop, then, I shot him a hand pistol and climbed up the stairs into the bus, all casual and slow. I walked past the row of seats and Rodeo's little bed, and then on through our living room, past the bookshelves bolted to the wall, and the couch bolted to the floor, and the garden of plants growing in planters bolted under a window. Through the window, I saw a kid walking toward the back of the bus, his hands covered in a little lump under his shirts, his walk as easy and smooth as my own. He didn't even look in Rodeo's direction. He was a natural, that kid. I'm stopping there. Not quite all of chapter 1, but that gets you to page 11. If you're interested in this book, look it up online, see if you can check it out digitally, see if you can find a recording of it online. Take care.